Our God is greater, and our God is stronger, and God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, He's awesome in power. Our God, for our God is greater, and our God is stronger, and God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, He's awesome in power. Our God, our God. One last time, give him a shout of praise. He's worthy. So let's praise His name, please. Higher than the mountains that I face, stronger than the power of the grave, constant in the trial and the change. This one thing remains. This one thing remains. Say higher than the mountains that I face. Understand He's higher, stronger than the power of. Yes, He is. He's stronger than the power of the grave. He's constant in the trial and the change. This one thing praise? Can you thank Him for the love that He... It's in His presence. It's in His presence. It's found in His hands that we can find what is secure. So let's sing this wonderfulness.
Away. God's heart quest. And like I said, as we go into this, we need to understand the Hebrew understanding of the heart. And as I said in the previous messages, I'll say again today, the Hebrew understanding of the heart included the emotions, but it also involved what? The mind, the conscience, and the will. It means everything that is going on inside of you. So if you were to talk to a Hebrew, a person, a Hebrew believer in this time, as we're going to read today in 1 Samuel, I should say in 2 Samuel, 1 Samuel, their understanding of the heart means it entails everything that is going on with them, every aspect of their life. And I said this also in every single message, that all the men and women whom God chose to use greatly had weaknesses and made mistakes. But God saw their potential if only their hearts would turn towards Him. So it is your heart that matters. And again, what's a popular phrase in the world? Follow your heart. Well, that's not what I'm telling you to do through this series of messages. It's called what? God's heart quest. God is looking for hearts that are doing something. I'm going to hit that here real quick. But it is your heart that matters. And over the last little while, we talked about King Saul, and we're talking about King David now. That was the difference between King Saul and King David. The difference was their heart. And you're going to understand it here when I read this to you, what we hear about Saul, what is said to Saul in 1 Samuel 13, verse 14. It says, but now your kingdom must end. Samuel says this to King Saul. He says, now your kingdom must end. Why? For the Lord has sought out a man after his own heart. Now, let me stop there a second. I think it might be important just to rehash and remember some things and talk about some things. Remember, what I say is the popular phrase of the world. Everybody here, follow your heart. But there's a mistake. Follow heart is proper. We should follow the heart, but not follow our heart. I'm not to follow Roma's heart. But what does God say there when He's talking to Saul? What is God looking for? A person who is what? Seeking and following His heart. God's heart. That's the key. That's the heart you're to follow. You're to follow His heart. You're not to follow your heart, the heart of your wife or your husband, your boyfriend or your girlfriend, this person, that. You're not to follow your own heart. You're to follow His heart. That's the key. That's the difference. That is what God is looking for. And then it says, the Lord has already appointed him to be the leader of His people. In other words, Samuel tells Saul, your kingdom's got to end because you're not following the Lord the way that you're supposed to. Your heart's not after His. Like I said, we already know that Saul's heart was changed. And I don't want to go rehash all that. You can go follow these messages online. But God said to tell me He's looking for a man. He's looking for a man after His own heart. He says, the Lord's already appointed him because you have not kept the Lord's command. The reason why Saul found himself in trouble, the reason why his kingdom must end was because he became disobedient to the Lord. And here's the thing. If you have a hard time following the Lord, if you have a hard time following His commands, it's not that you have a hard time following His commands, you have a heart problem. Because the problem is, you're not following His heart. Because if you're following His heart, then you will find it easy to follow His commands. I'm not saying it's not going to be tough. I'm not saying there's not going to be trials or tribulations. I'm not saying that things are going to go wrong. But when you truly are pursuing His heart, you find it easy to listen to this. And now, again, let me sort of put this out there, and I'll prove it to you, like in relationships. Oh, Andrew walked down. Like Andrew and Carl. Again, I'll draw attention. They've been dating for a little while now. And again, of course, when you're first dating or when you first get married, when you first involve in a relationship, it's amazing how it's like you're just there anticipating every word, every response, every moment you get together. Am I right, Carly? I think you were gone for 3 weeks. How excited were you seeing him yesterday? Okay, all right. But were you delighted? Okay. She was anticipating. I'm sure she wanted to see her mom. But to some degree, we'll cut this offline. I bet you were anxious to see Andrew, weren't you? Okay, all right. See. All right. And because of that, it makes it very easily to when they say something, you're grasping for it, and to believe them, to follow them. That's how it's supposed to be with God. See, when you follow His heart, it's very easy to say, oh, he loves me. He does really love me. He's really thinking a lot of. Sorry, Carly, because I put you out there. Let me just go. All right. I'm sorry. I just wanted to, since I knew that they you know, they're yeah. All right. Let me just stop and go on. Okay. All right. Okay. But God is looking for a person, a man after His own heart. See, like I said, if you have a problem listening, if you have a problem following His commands, you don't have really a listening problem. You have a heart problem. You have a heart problem. You have a heart problem. And in fact, like I said, this is the difference between David and Saul. And in fact, like we read, you know, I would use this every week too, in Acts chapter 13, verse 22, we hear this about David. This is said about 1,000 years after David. It says, but God removed Saul, so we know what God removed Saul, and replaced him with David, a man about whom God said, I have found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do. And the reason why God could say that about David is why? Because if God would speak, David would do what? He would listen. He would do. Whatever God told him to do, he would do. That's why he could say David was a man after his own heart. And again, I'm going to touch this again a little bit later on here, this next I'm going to say, but how important is your heart in serving God? Jeremiah 29:13 tells us. And you will seek me and find me when you search with me. This is God talking. In other words, if you want to know who God is, you'll find out who He is. He says you will seek me and find me when what? When you search with me with all your heart. Okay. So again, anytime God describes someone as a man after his own heart, a person after their own heart, we need to study him very carefully. And we went through all of this stuff with David so far. We dealt with his battle with Goliath. We dealt with how he handled King Saul when Saul came after David and killed him, and David, you know, was just doing what was right. You know, the old phrase, you know, David did everything properly. You heard the phrase, no good deed goes unpunished, right? You know, it's you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't, you know? We showed how David always did what was proper in situations. Then last week, I don't have the message online, so I'm going to tell you I'll have it up this week. When you weren't here last week, you need to listen to the message from last week. We dealt with, we read all this stuff about David, but yet David did have a flaw in his life. And that flaw, that little thing, see, little things make a difference. They do matter. That little thing led to a mess. It led him to adultery, tried to cover it up. It led him to murder. It opened the door for havoc to run loose in the life of his family. One small thing led to a mess. So the little things are important. Let me tell you something. Well, it's only a little white lie. It's only one pornographic picture. It's only one drink of alcohol. It's only one time using of drugs. It's only one time smoking marijuana. All it takes is one time to take you down a road you don't want to go down. All it takes is one time, and you never do it. Those things can lead to a lot bigger things. But we found out that God forgave David. So all this is dealing around with, again, all of this is dealing with God's heart. God is looking for a heart of someone who is searching for His heart, that is following His heart, that has desire to go after the heart of God. So we're going to continue to look at God's heart questions. I want to try to keep an eye on time this morning. But to start with this message this morning, I asked these questions. Have you ever really wanted God to bless you? I mean, really bless you. Have you ever had a desire for God to just bless you and bless your life? For God's favor to be poured out upon you. For you know that God is truly in this thing. That God is truly wants what's best for you. How did you go about to achieve this? Did you ask God for it? Did you try to bargain for it? Did you try to sort of make a deal and say, God, look, you know, I'm Wayne Brady. Let's make a deal. Can I pick curtain 1, 2, or 3? Or box 1, or whatever. Did you try to make a deal with God? Well, Lord, if I do this, will you do this? See, but the thing, how many times, honestly, if we're not careful, we sometimes begin to think that way. Well, if I check this box, then God will do this. If I do this, And with certain things in Scripture, it sort of works that way, but not really, because it really works the way I'm going to tell you about this morning. But have you ever really, like I said, wanting God to bless you? And have you been trying to rack your brains out to figure out, well, God, how can I truly have your blessing flow through my life? I'm going to simply tell you this. It's all about a matter of the heart. That's what makes the difference. That's what made the difference in David's life. And that is what will make the difference in your life. And we're going to see that here this morning. I'm going to show it to you this morning. Okay? In 2 Samuel, chapter 7, verses 1 through 3, this is what we read. When David was settled in his palace, and the Lord had given him rest from all the surrounding enemies, the king summoned Nathan, the prophet. Look, David said, I am living in a beautiful cedar palace, but the ark of God is out there in a tent. Nathan replied to the king, go ahead and do whatever you have in mind, for the Lord is with you. And we said, well, okay. All right. What are you trying to say, Pastor? Well, let me sort of give you two different scenarios here. How different were the thoughts of David's heart when he sat in his palace from Nebuchadnezzar? I haven't really talked about Nebuchadnezzar in a while, but I might hit him in here a little bit more. But Nebuchadnezzar's when he walked through his. See, Nebuchadnezzar was the king that came in and conquered Judah after Israel already fell. The king of Judah remained. The Babylonian Empire was ruled by a guy named Nebuchadnezzar. He came in and conquered Judah, and he exiled all the people of Judah into Babylon and other areas. And during this time, you read this in the book of Daniel, that Daniel was a Jew, and he was a very trusted advisor of Nebuchadnezzar's, and Daniel began to share with Nebuchadnezzar a dream they had about Nebuchadnezzar need to be careful. Nebuchadnezzar needs to stay humble. Yes, God gave him the ability to be the known ruler of all the world at that time, the ruler of all the known world at that time. The Babylonian Empire actually ruled it all. And like I said, we're going to look at, you're going to see here how David was looking at something, then this Nebuchadnezzar. I said, David's view of what was in his life was different than Nebuchadnezzar's. When Nebuchadnezzar was walking through his temple one day, he thought of nothing but the power of his own might. He thought about his own honor and his own majesty. In other words, he walked through and he looked at the city of Babylon. He looked, isn't this a wonderful city that I have built? Look at what my hands have done. Look at all these things that I have done. All my armies have conquered. And later on, I may bring Nebuchadnezzar in and talk to you about it, but that was his thing. It was all about him. But David, as he's sitting here, when God has given him rest all around, when David allowed all his enemies before him to be defeated, David sits there as he looks out, he begins to ponder, and he says, it has nothing to do with everything that he has accomplished. He sat there, and he had a heart that is full of a plan how to glorify and give honor to God. He's saying, Lord, he brings the prophet, he says, I'm here in a house, I'm here in a beautiful home, in a beautiful palace, but the God that I serve, what represents him is sitting out in a tent, in a flimsy tent, and here I am in something that is beautiful and prepared. So we need to remember, see, God tells us in his word, he says, God resists the proud, but what does he do? He gives grace and glory, to the humble, those who are humble. See, David thinks about the majesty of his own house. He says, I'm living in a beautiful cedar house, and compares it with the crudeness of the habitation of the ark, where the ark of God is out there in a tent. And this thought to him is inappropriate, that he should dwell in a palace and the ark in a tent. So, well, let me tell you, this is not a building fund thing today, okay? I'm not saying this, well, you're trying to say we need to build a house. No, we're talking about something altogether different, okay? So I just want to clear that up real quick. David desired to have the ark with him in the city, and he did not risk what happened. In other words, the ark, when David became king, the ark wasn't there in the city of Jerusalem at the time. It was somewhere else. It was actually in one of the wars. It was grabbed by the Philistines, and it caused some havoc in the land of the Philistines. And the Philistines sent it back to Israel. It's been sticking in this one guy's house for a long time. And then David eventually retrieves it from that house and brings it to Jerusalem. But while it's there, it's still just sitting in a tent. And this is something that just, it doesn't sit well with David. So now David desires for the ark to have a better dwelling place than just a tent. David shares his thought with Nathan the prophet, and Nathan told him as a friend and as a confidant, go and do what's in your heart, for the Lord is with you. Now think about it. Nathan, he knows, I mean, God's blessed David everywhere he went. So of course he figures this is something that the Lord's placed on David's heart, that David should go ahead and do this thing. But we find out later on then that God tells him that, you know what, no, I've never once asked for this. And God tells Nathan real quick that night, he says, go to David, I want you to give him a message for me. I want you to tell him exactly what I want you to say, because I have something I want to tell him. So we read in verses 4 through 7, it says this. It says, but that same night the Lord said to Nathan, go and tell my servant David, this is what the Lord has declared. Are you the one to build a house for me to live in? Are you the one to build me a house? He says, I never lived in a house from the day that I brought the Israelites out of Egypt until this very day. I have always moved from one place to another with a tent and a tabernacle as my dwelling. Yet, no matter where I have gone with the Israelites, I have never once complained to Israel's tribal leaders and shepherds of my people Israel. I have never asked them, why haven't you built me a beautiful cedar house? So God's saying to David, I've never asked for this. So why are you asking this? Are you going to build a house for me? In other words, I think God wanted David to understand, he wants to understand is, even though later on God doesn't allow him to build the temple, God's not limited by what? By space. And with the tent, what did God do? The tent could be picked up and moved around. Once David built this temple, if you've ever seen anything in these stones that they did at the temple in Jerusalem, one stone over there would weigh like 15 tons. They're huge. When you begin to think about how ancient people moved stuff around to build it, we still have not figured out how they built the pyramids. They have all these hypotheses. With our technology we have today, we can't do what they did. We can't figure it out. But once you put a structure like that in place, you're not going to just very easily pick it up and move around. But the tent, that allowed God to move from tribe to tribe. If he said, as he moved on the priests, the prophets, he could move around because his ark was a portable tabernacle. So he can move around. But God says, I've never asked this. See, the New Testament commentary on the whole Bible says this, says the essence of God's instruction was this: do not fence me in. It is a wrong idea to give me a permanent habitation in one spot. By my nature, I move around with my people, wherever they may reside. I do not dwell in a house, but in the hearts of people. Furthermore, these verses are a deep-cutting criticism of the temple, or the idea of a fixed place of worship. The temple will institutionalize religion with all that it entails. All of a sudden, now it'll put a different dynamic on following God. It also will block off any growth towards a loftier, more universal faith, which is unhampered by confinement to a place. In other words, God is the God of what? The whole earth. Yes, he is the God of Israel, but he is still the God of the whole earth. And the idea of him being in the tabernacle, in the tent, he can move. In other words, he moves around freely. Once they put him in a permanent structure, it doesn't change him up, but it changes what? The way we think of. That's why we need to make sure that our thinking and our heart always lines up with his, because we are human. We can be very, very limited in how we think of things. So as history would show, David perhaps had a more true devotion, sweeter communion with God in a house of curtains than any of his successors in a house that was made of cedar. Others, David had the best relationship of all. Remember I told you, David was the one in which all the other kings were compared to. But God asked David, but God doesn't stop there. Here's what he continues to say in verses 8 through 17. And this is what I want you to see. I'll touch this here in a second. I'm going to get ahead of myself. Now go and say to my servant David, this is what the Lord of heaven's armies has declared. I took you from tending sheep in the pasture and selected you to be the leader of my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone, and I have destroyed all your enemies before your eyes. Now I will make your name as famous as anyone who has ever lived on the earth. So God is saying, I'm going to make your name what? As famous as anyone who's ever lived on the earth. And I will provide a homeland for my people Israel, planting them in a secure place where they will never be disturbed. Evil nations won't oppress them as they have done in the past, starting from the time I appointed judges to rule my people Israel. And I will give you rest from all your enemies. So God, they're saying, he's proclaiming, there's a time coming when Israel's going to be in their land and no one will ever mess with them or bother them again. And we can simply say this is one promise that has not been fulfilled yet, but God has promised it. He's going to do this for Israel. Well, how do we know this? Because Israel, does everybody around Israel love Israel? How do the Arabs feel about Israel? They're not too happy with it. Their surrounding countries aren't happy with it. So we know as of yet that this promise hasn't been fulfilled. But he says, but furthermore, the Lord declares that he will make a house for you, a dynasty of kings. And when you die and are buried with your ancestors, I will raise up one of your descendants, your own offspring, and I will make his kingdom strong. And he will be the one to build a house, a temple for my name. And I will secure his royal throne forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. If he sins, I will correct and discipline him with a rod, like any other father would do. But my favor will not be taken from him as I took it from Saul, whom I removed from your sight. Your house and your kingdom will continue before me for all time, and your throne will be secure forever. Ever. So Nathan went back to David and told him everything the Lord had said in this vision. See, God was simply saying, David, you want to build me a house and all this. He said, but what I'm going to do is, he says, eventually let him do it. He said, well, what I'm going to do, I'm offering you a great blessing. I'm making a great promise of your life. He said, first off, I promise I'm going to bless the nation of Israel. I'm going to give them a time where they're going to live here securely forever. It's never going to happen. We know that hasn't happened yet, so his promise is still going to be fulfilled. But then he talks about another promise. In fact, he says, I'm going to make a dynasty of kings come from you. He says, I'm going to establish a forever covenant with one of your sons after you, and he will reign with me forever. And that one he's talking about, anybody know? He wasn't talking about Solomon. Solomon ended up building the physical temple, but even though, like I said, God allowed that, that wasn't God's intention. God wasn't talking about Solomon building him a house. Anybody know who God was talking about? He's talking about Jesus. Jesus was building, Jesus would come and build an eternal house for God to dwell in, and because Jesus is of the line of lineage of David. I had this down here, said, God declares this over David. All of this is declared to David for one simple reason, because of his humbleness and his pursuit of God, that the Lord makes this promise to him, that he would give him a never-ending kingdom, and that there would be one of his sons to sit on the throne forever. And that promise is fulfilled through Jesus Christ. And also in that promise, when we read it, it says that you will have a dynasty. Let me find my little thing. It says you will have a dynasty of kings. We already know that all of David's offspring have died so far. Jesus died, but he rose again. But with that, it says you'll have a dynasty of kings. Have you thought about the Bible declares that when everything is said and done, that we're going to be princes and rulers in his kingdom? We're part of that. We as believers in Jesus Christ, we are part of that dynasty of kings. Jesus is the king, but we're part of that royal family. We're part of those rulers that he is talking about. See, God is declaring what he's going to do through Jesus Christ. But all of this is made possible because of David's heart pursuit of God. Because David wasn't thinking about himself, he was thinking about God. See, that's where the key comes in a lot of times. When we stop thinking about self, and we start thinking about him. Because how many times you heard me say, it's not about you, it's about him. It's not about you, it's about others. And because of David's heart pursuit for God, God was able to make this declaration to him. Now you would think sometimes, if we all said God was to tell us this, how would we respond? How would we react? What would we say in return to him? Would we try to be all sheepish? Oh, thank you, God. Thank you, God. No. Thank you, God. Just keep the praise coming. Yeah, I tried my hardest. I tried my whole God. You know how much I've... See, all of a sudden now, once we do that, you know what we're doing. How much we're starting to put us into the center of it again. But this was David's response to this. We read in verses 18 through 29, it says, and then King David went and sat before the Lord and prayed. Oh, he just went and sat before the Lord. He went to commune with him, went and talked with God. He says, who am I, O sovereign Lord? And what is my family that you have brought me this far? In other words, David still, at this point in his life, he stands amazed at what God has done. How God took him from being a shepherd, from being the youngest one in his family. We know. You know anything about ancient history? You know anything about the ancient of the rights of the families of that day? The firstborn pretty much got everything. They got half or more of everything. They got the biggest portion and everything. If you were the last one to come along, you got what was left over. After everybody else got their stuff, you got what was left over. But here's the youngest in his family, exalted to be the ruler of the nation of Israel. It wasn't his oldest brother. It wasn't, probably necessarily the strongest brother. But because of his heart for God, he says, who am I, O sovereign Lord? What is my family that you have brought me this far? And now, sovereign Lord, in addition to everything else, you speak of giving your servant a lasting dynasty. Do you deal with everyone this way, O sovereign Lord? And here's what I'm going to say. Those who pursue his heart, I'm going to say this. Yes, he does. Now, again, we cannot have the promise of the Messiah coming through our line because why? He's already come. And his name is Jesus. But we can understand that God will give us promises to those who pursue his heart. But again, David saying to the Lord, basically, I'm not deserving of this. What more can I ask? What more can I say to you? You know what your servant is really like, sovereign Lord. Because of your promise and according to your will, you have done all these great things and have made them known to your servant. How great are you, Lord? How great are you, O sovereign Lord? There is no one like you. We have never heard of another God like you. What other nation on earth is like your people Israel? What other nation, O God, have you redeemed from slavery to be your own people? You made a great name for yourself when you redeemed your people from Egypt. You performed awesome miracles and drove out nations and gods that stood in their way. You made Israel your very own people forever, and you, O Lord, became their God. And now, O Lord, I am your servant. Do as you have promised according to me and my family. Confirm it as a promise that will last forever. And may your name be honored forever, so that everyone will say, the Lord of heaven's armies is God over Israel. And may the house of your servant David continue before you forever. O Lord of heaven's armies, God of Israel, I have been bold enough to pray this prayer to you because you have revealed this to your servant, saying, I will build a house for you, a dynasty of kings. For you, God, O sovereign Lord, your words are true, and you have promised these good things to your servant. Now may it please you to bless the house of your servant, so that I may continue forever before you. For you have spoken, and when you grant a blessing to your servant, O sovereign Lord, it is an eternal blessing. So David, he begins to praise God for what God had declared over his life. David didn't ask for this. David wasn't expecting this. But because of his pursuit of God's heart, because of his willingness to listen to God when God spoke, God, when he had a desire to do something for God, God says, you want to do something for me? No, I want to do something for you. See, that's how it works. That's the difference. See, he wasn't doing it to get from God. And so understand it this morning. I'm not telling you all of a sudden, okay, I got the plan now. I need to do this to get. No. It's about truly having a heart that's pursuing God. See, it wasn't that David he had a heart for God. He didn't let God, his covenant box, the Ark of the Covenant being out there the way it was. And it bothered him, and he wanted something better for God. God could have done it. God could have asked for any time he wanted. But David just had a passion that he wanted God to have the best. He wanted to do his best for God. And that is why God can move and offer this blessing in his life. David wasn't doing it to see what he could get from God. He loved God, and he just stood in awe of what God did in his life. And in return, he was saying, God, I just want to declare your name. Somehow, some way, I want to bring honor and glory and power to you. I want to let people know that you're the one who did this. You're the one who did this. See, we need to get to the same place where we can get to a place where we want to just let people know that God's the one who brought us to the place we are. And I like what David said because it goes along with what Paul says later on in the New Testament, where Paul says we can boldly approach the throne of grace. Because David says this there. He says, Lord, he says, I have been bold enough to pray this prayer to you because you have revealed all this to your servant. Because of who we are in Jesus Christ, and because of what God declares of the forgiveness we have in Him, because of what Jesus paid on Calvary and belief in Him, we can boldly approach Him and beseech Him and ask Him for things. But I'm telling you, if we're really pursuing His heart, we won't ask anything that is selfish. But I have here, what a prayer, what a praise that David declared. I'm going to close with the main thought. I'm asking the musician to come up in a second. Our pursuit of God's heart will lead to a mind-blowing promise from God. What would you do if God came down and through the man of God spoke and said, because of the way your heart pursues me, I'm going to bless your family forever. In fact, I'm going to establish a covenant with your family that at least one of them is going to be before me forever. I'm going to bless you in a great and mighty way. I'm going to give your family rest and peace all around you. Nothing is ever going to be able to harm your family. Would you say, oh, thank you, God, I deserve that, because I've been a good little soldier. See, David didn't get it because he was a good little soldier. This happened because David had a heart of pursuing God. Many of us want God's blessings, but what it is, again, let's be honest, we're really trying to play let's make a deal. Instead of just pursuing His heart. Instead of being on a heart quest for God. See, God's on a heart quest. God is looking for a person after His own heart. And if you allow your heart to pursue His heart, everything, the type of blessing that He declared to David, He will allow and declare over your life today. But it all comes down to, it's the heart that matters. It's the heart that makes the difference. Like I said, I said I would get back to this portion of Scripture. But in Jeremiah 29, verses 11 through 14, many times we see verse 11 everywhere. And this is the verse everyone jumps on. But the key to really have verse 11 take place is found in some of the other verses. He says, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. In those days, when you pray, I will listen. If you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me. In other words, this is one version here. I had another version as we open the message. When you seek me, you will find me. When you search me with all your heart. When you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me. But listen what it says in verse 14. I will be found by you, says the Lord. I will end your captivity. Again, understand, I know He's talking to the children of Israel in captivity here. But there are certain parts here that apply to us as believers today. He says, I will end your captivity and restore your fortunes. I will gather you out of the nations where I sent you and bring you home again to your own land. But what I want you to focus on when he says, I will end your captivity and restore your fortunes. That happens when we seek Him with all of our heart, wholeheartedly. Everything happened to David for one reason only. Because of what God declared in 1 Samuel and in Acts. That He found David, a man after His own heart. I found David, a man after His own heart. Why? Because he will do everything I want him to do. See, David didn't do it to get blessed. David did it because he was pursuing the heart of God. That's the difference. Because David just wanted to be pleasing in the Lord's sight. But if we understand, if we're pleasing in the Lord's sight, if we're pursuing His heart, blessings just naturally flow from God as you pursue Him. That's what He constantly promised Israel throughout the Old Testament. He constantly tried to tell them, look, He says, just listen, just love me, pursue me. He says, and Deuteronomy 20 tells me, He says, not only will these blessings come upon you, but they will literally overtake you. But it all resulted down to whether or not their heart was pursuing the heart of God. And here's the greatest thing about it is, this is a walk you don't have to do on your own. All you have to do is have a willingness heart to follow Him, and then God will come in and really do everything else. You just must step out in faith and start in pursuit. And He'll take care of it. But even with that being said, He's still the one initially pursuing you. You just have to respond to His request, respond to His moving towards you, and as you do, then He takes up the rest. He initiates it. We answer to that initiation, and then He takes care of the rest. I mean, what could be easier than that? And this heart pursuit of having these things done all simply comes with you responding to His call to you. Because it's not about you, it's about Him. And God wants to pour blessings out upon your life, but you have to be willing to pursue His heart. You must have a desire to pursue Him. Get self out of the way, focus on Him. And then this great blessing, God will give you a mind-blowing promise. He will declare it in your life, and you're just going to stand there in utter amazement, where I have this portion of Scripture on there, so I'll go ahead and read it now. 1 Corinthians 2:9 it says, that is what the Scripture means when it says, no eye has seen, nor ear has heard, no mind has imagined what God has prepared for those who love Him. He begins to rebuild things in the Scripture, but we won't know it. Our minds, when we finally make heaven our home, you know what? We're going to say, I thought it was going to be beautiful, but God, this is beautiful. Oh, wow. I didn't even imagine it was going to be like this. Even down here, God can do the same type of mind-blowing promises down here and give you a life that's beyond belief. But it's all found in your pursuit of Him. Amen. I'm asking musicians to come. One thing David said in his prayer, in his response to God, is he says, how great you are, O sovereign Lord. We need to get to the place where we once again see the greatness of God. Where we see Him as being awesome. So we're going to end this service today with the song, Great Are You, Lord. Because this whole song truly points us to who He is. Because it tells us that He's the one who gives life. He's love. He gives light in the darkness. He's hope. He restores. He is anything you need and everything you need can be found in Him. And I want you to be all that you can be in God. See, David was because of his heart pursued God. As God pursued his heart, David reciprocated it and pursued the heart of God. And we need to be like him. We need to do the same. That is truly the only way you're going to experience the full blessings of God upon your life. So I want to encourage you. Step out in faith. Be radical and say, God, maybe we can pray, Lord, change my heart. Change my heart to where I truly see you as the center of my life instead of me. May it help. Start thinking about others than yourself. Because all of this here, it wasn't about David, it was about the Lord. And because of that, God gave him a great promise. God's offering to us, but it's all found in the proper pursuit of a heart, not our heart, but His heart. Amen. Will you stand with me? And if you're here this morning, as some of those questions I read at the beginning, if you desire to truly have God bless you like never before, and you know, say, Lord, I understand it's about a pursuit of you. Remember, I said, God will initiate the act, but you have to respond. That's why we have an altar call. It's a time for you to respond to what God has placed upon our